ask
Yes, you may.
that you move your microphone either closer to your cheek, because we can hear when you breathe through your nose, it rumbles.
How's that? Is that a bit better?
Yep.
Okay. Just getting used to this. So anyway, I wanted to start out with a request to everybody. As you know, I tend to pack in the information in each of these sessions. And what I would like to do is to ask you to hold your questions until the end of the presentation or to type them into the chat as you think of them. And then we'll review them once I've finished the material. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I had something else, but I didn't write it down, so I can't remember it. There you go. Oh, I know what it was. I don't know how many of you are actually following along with the course outline that I sent out. I gave you the most recent version. One of the things that might help to keep you on track is to have that document open. So for tonight, it's class 8A on turning number 2, which is about emptiness. It's on page 5 of that document I sent you out. So you could just sort of see the structure and you can follow along as we go. It'll keep you feeling like you know what's coming and where we've been. All right, that was the thing I forgot. All right. So, welcome back. It's been a month. I feel better. I've made big progress in terms of the next 4 lessons. I'm going to do 2 more after that, which will mean we'll end at the end of April 27th. And then I'm going to take the summer off with your permission and start up in September with the section on Ken Wilber. So this is like a multi-year investment everybody's making. I hope they don't mind too much.
No.
Anyway, so let's get at it. I want to talk now about the second turning of the Wheel of Dharma. We had just started this section last time when I saw too much incomprehension on people's faces and realized I hadn't done a good enough job in making it understandable. So I've improved it a little bit. So in the view of Tibetan Buddhism, Shakyamuni Buddha gave 3 relatively distinct cycles of teaching in the course of his life. Each of these turnings of the Wheel of Dharma, as they're called, was unprecedented and groundbreaking. The first turning, as we've already seen, corresponds to the Hinayana portion of the path. The second turning, which highlights emptiness, and the third turning, which focuses on the Buddha nature within everyone, correspond to stages on the Mahayana path. Each turning is a presentation of a view appropriate to a particular level of training and understanding. Each provides a conceptual orientation on the basis of which one can progress more deeply in one's meditation practice. Now, I need to screen share. So, we've seen this map before. This time we're focusing on this area right here. Rajgir is the modern day spelling. It's a little bit different in the quotation we're going to read in a second. But anyways, this is where the second turning was promulgated. So I'm just going to continue, start at the beginning of my list. That seems to be that Leslie is our first person. So if we could go to, oh, how do you like that? Yeah, rats. In my hurry, I forgot to put the readings up tonight.
I've printed it. I could read it while you're getting it, if you'd like.
Okay, maybe. Yeah, if you go ahead, I'll see if I can do that in the background.
Okay. Reading number 8. In places such as Vulture Peak near Rajagiriya, and chiefly to the communities of Bodhisattvas, the Buddha, reveal the Bodhisattva Taka, the Bodhis, a lot of words in it, Vata basket of the greater vehicle, which extensively teaches the ineffable, unthinkable, inexpressible reality of just what is, whereby all things from form to omniscience are totally divorced from substantial existence.
Okay, so I finally managed to get this up. Are you able to see these online on the? Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Good. That worked. Thank goodness. So that's kind of a power-packed passage. So the point is that this is one of the places, Vulture Peak, where the Buddha is documented as having presented this second turning. And the people that he was talking to were considered to be bodhisattvas. And we're going to talk about who a bodhisattva is a little later this evening. And so together they're referred to as that. Pitaka is the term for basket. So all the teachings having to do with the bodhisattva are in this grouping. And the Mahayana is called the greater vehicle to distinguish it from the lesser vehicle, which was Hinayana. And its focus is on the ineffable, unthinkable, inexpressible reality of what is. Anyway, let's not get too stuck on that at the moment. I want to switch now to this graphic, which I've handed out to people. So the Buddha's teachings on emptiness are found in the Prajna Paramita Sutras. The word Prajna Paramita means the perfection, the paramita, of wisdom, which is prajna. Sanskrit's a bit tricky. It's a little bit like German in the sense that people like to create compound words. And so you'll see a lot of evidence of that in Sanskrit. I guess what really we should be doing is putting in dashes in between the words so that it's a little easier to follow. Anyway, so you can see here there are three main texts. This 8,000 line Prajna Paramita, and then it's supplanted by a 25,000 one. In fact, there's a 100,000 line version as well, but I didn't bother to put it in. But the Heart Sutra is probably the most famous of these. Let me just get on track here. So the teachings on emptiness are given in a number of works of important Indian commentators, and the primary one is Nagarjuna. He was venerated as the second Buddha because of his role. He's the initiator of Mahayana Buddhism and the founder of Madhyamika, which is the middle way, the most important Mahayana philosophy in Tibet. And he's the one whose works on emptiness provide the foundation on which all other Mahayana thinkers build. I won't try, well, I guess I could try and pronounce this. Nagarjuna's most important text on emptiness is right here. Mula Madhyamika Karika. Root verses on the middle way. And finally, just for your information, I've included three other very prominent Madhyamika masters. You may or may not have come across their names. So, the second turning teachings on emptiness speak about two levels of selflessness. The first is the absence of personal self or ego, which is expounded by the Buddha in the first turning. And those were given to the Shravakas. Now that technical term is for the hearer, a person who listens to the first turning teachings and applies them in his or her life. Somebody's got their hasn't muted themselves. I can hear a phone.
I just muted, yeah. It's okay.
Okay. So the absence of a personal self was detailed in the section of the first turning called the Abhidharma. Those were advanced teachings having to do with psychology, phenomenology, etc. The word Abhidharma means higher Dharma. This large group of texts provides a detailed examination of egolessness, karma, and enlightenment. The Abhidharma developed largely within Buddhist monastic circles as a response to the need of institutionalized Buddhism to give a coherent, consistent, and credible account of itself within the learned religious culture of India. They were being peppered by questions from quite erudite Hindus, so they had to come up with answers. The Abhidharma was the place where these are found. As Buddhism evolved, it found its doctrines critiqued by other schools and sects in the climate of competition amongst traditions for patronage and protection. It found itself called upon to systematize and rationalize the core Buddhist teachings, always in relation to other schools, both Buddhist and non-Buddhist. So the Abhidharma is considered the foundation of all Buddhist learning, particularly in the fields of psychology and philosophy, because it lays out the basic vocabulary, the central concepts, and the critical perspectives that underlie all later discussions of doctrine in Buddhism. At the same time, owing to its sophistication, the full study of Abhidharma is often postponed until one has progressed to a relatively advanced level in one's scholarly study. The self of the individual, the I that we think exists, is revealed to be a label attached to a stream of impersonal dharmas or events. The recognition of this leads to the abatement of thirst and the cessation of suffering. Okay, let me see. I see Belinda is there, but David is not. Am I correct about that? In that case, I'll ask Belinda.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick explanation. David didn't sleep well last night. We had a very busy day with a plumber coming, and that ended up in a fireside.
Oh, good.
With David carrying the bulk of that, so he's exhausted.
Gotcha.
Okay, so do you want me to read number 9?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Okay. I think I can actually see this tonight. The goal for Shravaka, the hearer, is the removal of suffering. That goal is called nirvana. The Shravaka is not trying to remove the suffering of all beings, nor is he trying to attain Buddhahood. He does not have the vision, the understanding, or the confidence necessary to do that. His aim is relatively modest. It is simply to remove the cause of his own suffering. Nonetheless, one cannot say that his realization of emptiness is not very profound. It is said that it corresponds to that of the Bodhisattvas on the first of the 6 levels. It removes the veils of ignorance and confusion that make deeper and more subtle levels of emptiness so inaccessible. Therefore, by realizing that the not self-emptiness of the skandhas, by realizing the not self-emptiness of the skandhas, one is preparing for the higher vehicles, whose goal is not just removing one's own suffering, but the suffering of all beings.
Okay, so maybe the word skandhas is something you don't remember from several meetings ago. And that's the bundles. Those are the things that make up,
Oh, yeah.
there are 5 things that make up a human being, including form and consciousness, etc.
Yeah.
Okay, so what this passage is really doing is telling us what the goal is for the first turning. Now we're going to contrast that with the second turning goal. So the Mahayana moves beyond the Shravaka's understanding in two ways. First, the Hinayana aspiration is seen as limited, being aimed at the liberation of only oneself. A deeper aspiration is the awakening of all beings that needs to be generated. Secondly, the Prajnaparamita teaches that in addition to the egolessness of one's own self, one must meditate more deeply in order to uncover a second level of egolessness, that of the dharmas. Now, this word dharma gets a lot of use. We've heard it used in the big sense as the religion, but it also has a much smaller, more minute understanding, which is about events, or elemental realities, as they call them. So when you see it used in the plural, the word dharmas refers to elemental realities. A dharma is the smallest unit of experience that human beings can have. Dharmas are momentary appearances in our experience and follow one another in rapid succession. Through meditation, we learn that what we think of as an I is in fact a continuous stream of constantly changing moments of experience, or dharmas. To see that the I is nothing more than a figment of our own imagination is to attain the Hinayana level of realization. In one of the earliest schools of Buddhism in northwest India, there are 75 distinct types of dharmas listed in their version of the Abhidharma, while a later Mahayana school expanded the list to 100. Okay, so let's see. Alan Fuller, could you read number 10 for us?
Yep. A dharma is said to be an instantaneous flashing or appearance. It appears, then disappears in an instant. It has no duration. It is an eruption of energy. Categories of time and space are again conceptual labels applied to momentary dharmas.
That's okay.
According to the Abhidharma, the nature of our actual experience is timeless. It has no duration and is beyond any notions of past, present, and future. A dharma is defined entirely by its manifestation. What it appears to be, how it appears, is what it is, and there is nothing behind the appearance. The appearance of each dharma defines its essential character or mark. For example, the experience of insight is a dharma that is quite different in its character from the experience of hatred, which is another dharma.
I guess I really should have presented you with a long list of all the dharmas, but I didn't think to do that. Sorry about that. In short, in the Hinayana view, dharmas of all kinds are real, including the dharmas of samsara and of nirvana. Thus, liberation is conceived of as the abandonment of samsara and the attainment of nirvana. Nagarjuna and other Mahayana masters taught that of all the dharmas, including samsara and nirvana, they're themselves empty of an essential nature. Samsara and nirvana are nothing more than conceptual labels that we put on a reality that is ineffable and beyond any conceptualization whatsoever. That's a tough one to get your mind wrapped around. The Prajnaparamita shows how the egolessness of dharmas and the aspiration to save all beings are connected. When one is striving to attain liberation from samsara, One ignores the piteous cries of suffering beings in time and space. But when one realizes that samsara and nirvana are simply concepts, one realizes that there is no longer anything to reject or anything to attain. This realization leaves one aspiring to be nowhere other than where one is now, among suffering beings. And this freedom opens a floodgate of compassion for all that live. So let's talk about the heart of enlightenment. Beings with the Mahayana motivation want liberation not only for themselves, but for all sentient beings. The reason I'm using the word sentient beings is that we're not just talking about human beings. Do you remember the 6 levels of the Buddhist, or the 6 worlds that we potentially can live in? Where we have gods, and they have all kinds of, well, you have animals, and then you have lesser beings who are trapped in a hell-like environment, etc. All of those are considered to be sentient beings. They all have consciousness. Okay, so that's the goal for Mahayana, to liberate all of them. They see the welfare of all sentient beings as their own responsibility. According to the traditional analogy, when they see the suffering of others, they are as deeply moved as a mother caring for her own child. For Bodhisattvas, helping others is not a matter of choice. It is the essence of who they are. They spend their lives and will even endure death in the service of others. It is said that the Bodhisattva can never refuse the request of sentient beings for help. Mahayana motivation is born with the arising of something called Bodhicitta. The Sanskrit word Bodhicitta is made up of 2 words, Bodhi, which means enlightenment, and Chitta, which is mind or heart. So it could be translated as the mind of enlightenment or the heart of enlightenment. Since the word Chitta includes general awareness as well as emotional capacities, Chitta is actually considerably broader in meaning than the English word mind. It refers to the unconditioned intelligence of a realized Buddha existing within each sentient being. The birth of Bodhicitta is like a clear, fresh spring appearing in a dry desert. The dry desert is the territory of ego, where everything is pre-planned, expected, and under control. Nothing can grow in this environment because the ego itself is nothing more than dry sand. The ego, in fact, is opposed to life as too disturbing to its territoriality. Into this dead territory, Hinayana practice enables people to dig down deep beneath the lifeless desert. At a key point, the miraculous spring of Bodhicitta appears, pointing to the enlightened wisdom that exists in the limitless reservoir beneath the desert surface. Bodhicitta and its cultivation lie at the very heart of the Mahayana. Okay, let's see what we have to say here. Lori is here, I think, tonight. So how about number 11, please?
Okay. Bodhicitta is foundational to all we do. Like a root of a medicinal tree whose branches, leaves, and flowers all produce life-enhancing medicine. The quality and purity of our practice depend on its permeating every method we use. With it, everything is assured. Without it, nothing will work. Chagut, 2 cold gates to Buddha's practice.
So bodhicitta is usually divided into 2 aspects, relative and ultimate. Both of these appear spontaneously and unexpectedly in the course of one's Hinayana practice and signal that it is time to move forward. Relative bodhicitta, sorry, I have to say that slowly, is the softening and the tenderness that begins to develop. This leads first to an increased awareness of the suffering of others, then to feelings of empathy, kindness, and compassion. As Kalu Rinpoche says, by becoming aware of the suffering of all sentient beings, we begin to feel genuine love and compassion for them. So this is very Baha'i-like in nature. Let's go on to number 12 here. I didn't notice if Ingrid is online tonight.
No, she's not here tonight.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Lisa, how about number 13?
Number 13.
Whoops.
Number 12.
Sorry. Yeah, 12 is right, correct.
12, okay. The inner attitude of compassion begins when we become aware of the suffering of those near and dear to us. It then gradually extends to universal love. The Bodhisattva who practices this way gradually eliminates every self-cherishing attitude and cultivates a state of mind truly oriented towards others. This is relative Bodhicitta.
Thank you. So this relative Bodhicitta is not only the attitude of sympathy towards others, along with feelings such as loving kindness and empathy. It also involves a series of practices, as we'll see next class. Through these practices, one generates altruistic thoughts and emotions. These lead to the development of a compassionate attitude towards others and provides the basis for extending oneself in actions to serve and benefit them. Ultimate bodhicitta itself has two dimensions or levels. First is the recognition of the illusory nature of things. What we have firmed up and solidified in our minds does not represent things in themselves, but rather merely our concepts of them. One finds now a growing awareness that what we think of reality is nothing more than an idea. It is the painful recognition that what we conceive about everything, our ideas about ourselves, our world, even our spiritual path, is nothing more than our own contrived version. And our conceptual versions of things have no actual reality. They are like a dream, a mirage, or an echo. They are a facsimile, not the real thing. But if our concepts of things are nothing more than our own concocted versions, then what does this say about reality? Is there then no such thing as reality at all? Ultimate bodhicitta may reveal the illusory or empty nature of our version of the world, but this does not mean that there is nothing there at all. Okay, how about Joey? This is number 13 now.
You have to unmute yourself, Joey.
In fact, at the second deeper level, ultimate bodhicitta is the awareness of a reality that is so intense, so boundless, and so ungraspable that the more accurate way to speak of it is to say nothing at all. Thus, in Tibetan Buddhism, one speaks of the emptiness of the ultimate reality, which does not mean that it is a total void, but rather that it is beyond our ability to speak or think about it. But through the path, we can most surely touch it and taste it, although such experience does not occur within the framework of ego.
So I think you'll find that there's a a pretty close relationship to the Baha'i faith in this regard, right? There are so many levels of reality that Baha'u'llah says we are incapable of speaking about. So you could think of the next world, for instance. But what Buddhism is saying is also true about this world and the way it's constructed. So let's talk about some of the Mahayana practices now. The various practices are based on the recognition that ego is engaged in a non-stop effort to maintain and aggrandize itself, to make itself larger. A big part of this process involves the manipulation of awareness, so that while we are acutely aware of the smallest particle of our own discomfort, we remain blissfully unaware of the terrible suffering that may be going on just next door. According to the Mahayana, this kind of ignorance is not the natural condition of the human being. In its natural state, our inherent awareness, our Buddha nature, is connected with all other beings and is sensitive to their least suffering. This awareness is so powerful and accurate that we must expend a tremendous amount of energy to suppress it and to block it out. We do this so that we can carry on with the illusion of an independent self. The various Mahayana practices, beginning with the Bodhisattva Vow and including the Paramatis and the active contemplations, such as the Four Immeasurables and Tonglen, which means sending and taking, act as antidotes to the deliberate ignorance of ego and as keys that unlock the illimitable stores of love and compassion of the Buddha nature. I don't know whether you know this fellow or not. He's fairly famous. Died in 1987. He was the first Tibetan master to come to North America and explain Tibetan Buddhism to people. He's responsible for setting up the Naropa Institute, which became the Naropa University. And he did many, many, many retreats, which I'm just in the process of reading. Fascinating guy. Anyway, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing his name correctly. I'm going to call him Chogyam Trungpa. According to this fellow, one eventually becomes stuck in Hinayana Buddhism and can advance further on one's spiritual journey only by taking the Bodhisattva Vow and entering the Mahayana. The Bodhisattva Vow is the commitment to put others before oneself. Sound familiar? It involves an inner willingness to let down the rigid barriers that we usually place around ourselves, and as we move about our lives, to include others' well-being in our thinking. How about, I'm not sure whether Peter's feeling up to reading on his phone or not.
Sure.
Oh, good. Okay, let me bring up number 14. There we are.
Can you raise it a bit?
Oh, yeah. Is that all right? It won't go any higher.
I can't see the bottom.
It's about 7 or 8 lines long. You're not able to see it?
The last line is cut off.
Weird. Okay.
Oh, wait a minute.
Number 14?
Yeah, okay, I can do it.
Okay.
Taking the Bodhisattva vow has a tremendous power for the very reason that it is not something we do just for the pleasure of ego. It is beyond oneself. Taking the vow is like planting the seed of a fast-growing tree, whereas something done for the benefit of ego is like sowing a grain of sand. Planting such a seed as the Bodhisattva vow undermines ego and leads to a tremendous expansion of perspective. Such heroism, or bigness of mind, fills all space completely, utterly, absolutely. Chogyam Trungpa the heart of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So taking the Bodhisattva vow implies that instead of holding on to our individual territory and defending it tooth and nail, we become open to the world we are living in. It means that we are willing to take on greater responsibility. Again, we'll come to Trungpa. How about Zilda?
Number 15.
Yes, please.
We are no longer intent on creating comfort for ourselves. We work with others. This implies working with our other as well as the other other. Our other is our projections and our sense of privacy and longing to make things comfortable for ourselves. The other is the phenomenal world outside, which is filled with screaming kids, dirty dishes, confused spiritual practitioners, and assorted sentient beings.
Okay. So taking this Mahayana approach of benevolence means giving up privacy and developing a sense of greater vision. Rather than focusing on our own little projects, we expand our vision immensely to embrace working with the rest of the world, the rest of the galaxies, the rest of the universe. Working with others is not easy, and it is not painless. I debated whether to include this one or not, but I decided let's hear what he has to say. Okay, Hangame.
Sure.
Number 16.
Requires that we not be completely tired and put off by people's heavy-handed neurosis, ego dirt, ego puke, or ego diarrhea. Instead, we are appreciative and willing to clean up for them. It is a sense of softness whereby we allow situations to take place in spite of little inconveniences. We allow situations to bother us, to overcrowd us.
Okay. Thank you. This lowliness reminds me of Baha'u'llah's honoring of the earth we stand on as the source of all our wealth. Mary, are you feeling like you'd like to read tonight?
Thank you. What I pass it, I appreciate. Can I pass?
Yes, you can.
Thank you.
Okay, so now actually, I skipped a quotation. I beg your pardon. I was going too fast in my notes. So, yeah, before I get to Baha'u'llah, I want to say that Trungpa goes even further in describing the nature of the servitude expected of a bodhisattva. Okay, how about Linda O'Neill? That's number 17.
Number 17. By taking the Bodhisattva vow, we actually present ourselves as the property of sentient beings. Depending on the situation, we are willing to be a highway, a boat, a floor, or a house. We allow other sentient beings to use us in whatever way they choose. As the earth sustains the atmosphere and outer space accommodates the stars, galaxies, and all the rest, we are willing to carry the burdens of the world. The heart of the Buddha.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And now this will make sense. This lowliness reminds me of Baha'u'llah's honoring of the earth that we stand on as the source of all our wealth. Okay, let's see. Marie, I think you're here, are you not?
I am indeed.
Excellent. Okay, so number 18.
What is it of which you can rightly boast? Is it on your food and your drink that ye pride yourselves, or on the riches ye lay up in your treasuries, on the diversity and the cost of the ornaments with which ye deck yourselves? If true glory were to consist in the possession of such perishable things, then the earth on which ye walk must needs vaunt itself over you, because it supplieth you and bestoweth upon you these very things by the decree of the Almighty. In its bowels are contained, according to what God hath ordained, all that ye possess. From it, as a sign of his mercy, ye derive your riches. Behold then your state, the thing in which ye glory. Would that ye could perceive it. Baha'u'llah, Summons of the Lord of Hosts.
Thank you. Nicely read. So, whoops. The act of entering the Bodhisattva's path involves saying the actual liturgy of the vow. There is more than one version of the vow. In this case, the vow appears in a person by the name of Gampopa. He wrote a book called Jewel Ornament of Liberation, which is quite famous. Let's see who we can torture this long passage with. How about Jennifer?
Okay.
There are a few weird names in here,
There
but go for
are,
it.
yes. May the Buddhas of the 10 regions of the world be gracious to me. May the teacher be gracious to me. I, so-and-so, will practice and rejoice in doing so, the good which grows from generosity, discipline, and meditation, now and forevermore, thus emulating the Tathagatas, Arhats,
Yes.
Sambuddhas, exalted ones, and
Bodhisattva.
Mahasavatas living on a high level of spirituality, who in ancient times developed an attitude directed towards unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment. From now until I have become the very quintessence of enlightenment, I will develop an attitude directed towards unsurpassable, perfect, great enlightenment, so that the beings who have not yet crossed over may do so, who have not yet been delivered, maybe who have not yet found their breath, may find it, and who have not passed into nirvana may do so. How many did I murder?
You did very well, actually. So, Bodhisattva, right? And then you've got the same sattva here. So this is where it would be great to have a little dash in between. A Maha is a great sattva. So it's even better than a Bodhisattva. But yeah, you did very well. I try and reserve those specifically for you. Following this ceremony, each new bodhisattva receives a name which is intended to reflect the kind of help they can provide for others. For example, those with a strong capacity for being generous, whether they show it or mask it with miserliness, might receive a Tibetan name with the word generosity in it. This is meant to act as a reminder to new bodhisattvas of their commitment and their need to release their own gifts to the benefit of others. The Bodhisattva vow is a commitment to put others before oneself. It involves an inner willingness to lower the inflexible barriers we usually place around ourselves, and to include others' well-being in our thinking as we conduct our normal lives. Mahayana practices, which begin with the Bodhisattva vow and include the six perfections and the active contemplations, act as antidotes to the intentional ignorance of our egos. They are keys designed to unlock the vast stores of love and compassion of the Buddha nature inherent within each of us. So let's talk about these 6 perfections of the Bodhisattva. The term in Sanskrit is paramita for the perfection. So let me see. Here we have a graphic starting at the bottom with generosity. We're going to look at each of these briefly. So here we have, in effect, sort of the main virtues of Mahayana Buddhism. And of course, all of them would fit in a Baha'i context beautifully, no problem. So you'll notice there's this progressive development. Oh, I see. Okay. I wrote a note to myself. We're only going to have time to look at the first three. So generosity, morality, and patience tonight. We'll focus on the other three next time. Okay. So, as we learned last month, one fills one's Bodhisattva vow by acting to benefit other beings. Since this kind of activity runs against the deeply ingrained habitual patterns of our usual lives, practices need to be followed that unlock our natural compassion. The most important set of practices for the Bodhisattvas, who are essentially Buddhas in training, are the 6 perfections. The word paramita means transcendent action and refers to practices because they are directed towards others, actually transcend your ego. They transcend ego in the sense that their energy ultimately flows from the selfless Buddha nature inside you. The paramitas indicate 6 general areas of selfless activity that bodhisattvas need to cultivate. Okay, so let's talk about generosity first. This is perhaps the most important of the paramitas because it is the core inspiration of the bodhisattva and underlies everything that he or she does. It involves opening oneself and one's resources to others, taking others' needs as seriously as one's own. There are 4 types of generosity mentioned in the Tibetan tradition. Here are the titles of them. I'll just read a few things about each of them. So, giving material things to those who are in need. Here one is relieving the suffering caused by hunger, thirst, or homelessness. The second, giving protection to those who need it. This might involve giving refuge to those who are in fear, giving aid to those under attack or illness, or working to help those who live in situations of political oppression. Hard not to think of Ukraine at the moment when you read this. Giving love. Many people in the world feel no love in their lives and may never have known it. They thus find it difficult to rest within themselves and are unable to experience even a moment of well-being or contentment. To such people, the Bodhisattva is called to open up his or her heart with love. Such love can heal even the deepest wounds. And giving Dharma. This does not mean converting someone to your religion or your way of thinking. It means showing them and opening up for them the pathway to their own hearts, their Buddha nature. Giving Dharma literally means giving the truth, what is real, beyond wishful thinking. It is giving them the gift that will take them to their own ultimate human fruition and fulfillment. It shows people how to take advantage of every experience that comes to them, to deepen their understanding of their lives, and to unlock their sanity, compassion, and strength. The attitude of generosity is what is important. We're not giving to someone who is beneath us. They are our equals. In giving, the bodhisattva must go beyond irritation and self-defensiveness, and must open his or her love, respect, and vulnerability to the other. Well, Mr. Harold Rosen, could you read number 20 for us, please?
Yes. Generosity is a willingness to give, to open oneself without philosophical or religious motives, just simply doing what is required at any moment, in any situation, not being afraid to receive anything.
Okay.
Cutting through spiritual materialism.
Thank you. Okay, so let's go on to the second perfection, which is discipline. The Bodhisattva's discipline requires them to follow the various ethical precepts, or shilas, they accept it in the Hinayana level of their training. This includes avoiding the 10 unvirtuous actions and cultivating the 10 virtuous actions, and following the appropriate precepts of a layperson, monk, or nun, as the case may be. So let's see what these non-virtues are. Here we go. Pretty common list: murder, theft, sexual misconduct, falsehood, slander, irresponsible chatter, verbal abuse, covetousness, vindictiveness, and holding wrong views. However, the motivation of one's Mahayana discipline is somewhat different. In the Hinayana, one's discipline was a way of accumulating merit, thus laying the foundation for the present and future paths. But in the Mahayana path, the motivation is to better help other people. The Bodhisattva cultivates the discipline of doing whatever is needed for the other, and is not put off by whatever inconvenience or difficulties this may bring. And now let's go to the third of the perfections, which is patience. The paramita of patience involves not reacting to situations out of irritation, frustration, or fear. There are 3 kinds of patience described in the Tibetan tradition. As a Baha'i, I personally find these descriptions of forbearance helpful. It is mentioned many times both as an attribute of the 3 central figures of the faith, i.e. the Bab, Baha'u'llah, and Abdu'l-Baha, as well as being demonstrated by several illustrious followers of theirs. However, this seminal virtue is not explained in any detail within the Baha'i writings themselves. So this is actually a bit helpful. Forbearance in the face of threats or harms from others. In life, people may resent and hate us, attempt to undermine and cut us down, constantly say mean and untrue things about us, and try to bring us various kinds of harm. Rather than retaliating, the Bodhisattva patiently endures such aggression. How about Linda? Excuse me. I'll have to switch here to the reading. That's number 21.
The practice of patience means not returning threats, anger, attacks, or insults. But this does not mean being purely passive. Instead, we use the other person's energy as in judo. Since we have related to our own aggression through the practice of meditation, we are not threatened by the other person's aggression, nor do we need to respond impulsively or aggressively. We do not return such a person's threat, and at the same time, we prevent further aggression by allowing the other person's own energy to undercut itself.
Okay, let's go back to the list here. The second one is the forbearance in the face of the hardships of spiritual practice. These hardships may take many forms. We might feel tremendous pain at not having the time or energy to study or practice the Dharma as we feel we need to. Or we might feel desolation at not being able to be with our teacher. In addition, practice often accelerates the ripening of karma, so that our lives suddenly become far more painful and difficult than before. Our practice may become a source of ridicule from others, or alternatively, a resource that makes others attempt to feed off us. Patience is being willing to live with these situations, knowing that this is how the spiritual path is. It cannot be otherwise. And lastly, forbearance in the face of dharmas that fail to be produced. So non-production here means that whatever arises in our lives is never quite what they seem or what we want them to be. Nothing ever matches our expectations. We are always waiting for a train that never comes. What does show up at the station platform, however, is not a train but an ostrich. And this ostrich wakes us up to the fact that the station platform was just our dream and that we were actually out in the middle of a wilderness somewhere. And yet this place doesn't quite make it as a wilderness either. When things are so manifestly not what we want, expect, or think, this could cause great irritation, impatience, or anger. Instead, as bodhisattvas, we know that the nature of reality never matches our concepts about it, which enables us to rest in an unconditioned patience, one without conditions or limitations. So the bodhisattva can practice patience because of an unconditional trust in whatever occurs. This trust is unconditional because it is not based on past experience. It is trust in the unfolding karma of situations, a confidence that whatever occurs is right, fitting, an expression of the order of things. For this reason, situations are accurate and they are headed somewhere. The bodhisattva is patient because he knows that only by allowing situations to unfold in their own way, to grow and reach maturation as they need to, can gentleness, kindness, and insight occur. Thus, the fruition of patience is living without expectations, without hope or fear. It is being present without a whole battery of ideas locked in place. Because the bodhisattva is without expectation, when things occur, he or she has no basis for irritation or impatience. And I have one last reading. Okay. So I'm wondering if Nina could read this one for me. Number 22. Is Nina still there?
Nina, did you hear us? Are you going to read? There she is. You're still muted, Nina. I don't know if she can hear us, Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, how about Eva?
Okay. Patience also feels space. It never feels new situations because nothing can surprise the bodhisattva. Nothing. Whatever comes to be destructive, chaotic, creative, welcoming, or inviting, the bodhisattva is never disturbed, never shocked, because he is aware of the space between the situation and himself. Once one is aware of the space between the situation and oneself, then anything can happen in that space. Therefore, transcendental patience means that we have flowing relationships with the world and we do not fight anything. Do you want me to read the...
No, it's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So that is our little discussion of the first three of those major virtues. Next time we will finish off our list. And with that, I'm going to finish off the presentation for this evening. And now we can turn off all this screen sharing and see who's here and see what they would like to say or questions they would like to ask. Do we have things in the chat that we need to address, Linda?
There was a question or comment from Belinda. I've been wondering why the word turning is used.
That's a very good question. I don't know that I have the actual answer for that.
I can
Harold?
take a shot. Yeah, I can take. I think, the turning of the wheel of Dharma.
Mm-hmm.
I think Buddha's revelation or teaching could be called a turning.
Yes.
And then within Buddhism itself, there's other major turnings. So we were looking at Nagarjuna and Madhyamika, or the middle way today mostly. That's a major turning. Yeah. So I think it means that the wheel, it means new guidance. So the wheel being turned, I think, means new aspects of Dharma, capital D Dharma, not the little d. So so it's a major event, an unfolding of Buddhist learning.
Now, one of the other translations that I've seen for that word is promulgation. So I don't know if that answers your question, Belinda. Did you want to clarify, or you're not? You're muted. Yep. Still muted. Huh.
Can you unmute yourself, Belinda?
Not working. Can you do it from your end, Linda?
Got it.
Oh, there she is.
Yes, there she goes.
Got it. Yeah, that does help, especially the idea that it's new guidance. And thank you, Mark, for mentioning that another translation of turning might be promulgation. That's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. So now, are there other questions that people have?
Yeah, Jennifer has a question.
Oh, does she? Okay, good.
Yeah, I put it in the chat. In number 13, it talks about touch and taste, and Ken Wilber also talks about the idea of tasting, and I don't actually understand it in a non-physical sense, like what we're talking
It's a metaphor.
about. So if we could go back to number 13 or whatever, and
let me just pull that back up on the screen.
I mean, is he just trying to say use your senses as opposed to your mind, or?
Well, interestingly enough, in Sufism, there's the same key word, tasting, as an alternative to thinking about something. When you actually taste it, put it in your mouth and experience it in that way, it's a much more direct thing than it is when you're doing it through your mind, which is sort of at arm's length, if you like. So it's that immediacy that they're talking about. Sorry?
Sort of sensing things as opposed to thinking about them, or?
Yeah, there's an immediacy to it that is missing through language. So when you stub your toe, you could think about it as an action, but the pain in the toe is real. So you're experiencing that without any buffer of concept.
Right. So
I don't know if that helps or not. But you're right, Wilber does use it. He uses it in the phrase one taste with a capital O and a capital T. And that's actually a steal right from Vajrayana Buddhism. That's a form of very high yoga where everything is perceived as having the same underlying reality. And you actually see it as you look out at the world. Okay, anybody else? Comments, thoughts, questions, reactions?
I have a confession about this term emptiness, that's emphasized quite a bit.
Yes, it is.
And it looks rather negative at first, from a Western point of view. Why would the most brilliant Buddhist that isn't Buddha be famous for emptiness?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't, and then, so it takes a lot of explanation. But I'm understanding emptiness to mean that nothing lasts forever. So it's empty of eternal abidingness, so to speak.
Yep.
And the reason that that's useful is that we tend to capture our thoughts and our beliefs and our possessions, and we want them to last forever. And it's a major part of Buddhist doctrine to realize that they don't last forever. But then on the other extreme there's the opposite view, is that nothing lasts. Nothing is very substantial at all, and nothing is worth paying any attention to. It doesn't have any, it's not a phenomenal. It doesn't abide at all. And he called that annihilationism. We want to avoid that extreme too.
Mm-hmm.
So I see the middle ground there. That's why it's called the middle way. It's between saying things last forever and that things are completely unimportant and have no pattern or structure to them. So if you're in between there, you have a kind of a humble outlook toward reality, both outside yourself and inside yourself. And that's a major part of becoming enlightened, not being too tied to especially your own beliefs. Like Nagarjuna even looked at Buddhism as something that you shouldn't get too attached to. That's what's quite amazing about Nagarjuna. And in the West, he was considered a great hero for being destructive and showing how false everything else is. And I think that they missed the boat on what he was really doing. But I think he was showing how, reality is more fluid and a process than we think. And we can't capture it in a movie or a snapshot or a possession or any of that. Anyway, but until I saw that middle way, I understood what that means. I was missing why spend so much time talking about emptiness.
Mm-hmm.
And then I realized later on, lots of Baha'i ideas are very parallel to that. Saying pretty much, detachment. We need to be detached. I think that emptiness and detachment, I think, are quite similar.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting that you raised that. When we get to talking about the third turning, the focus there is intended to help people not get trapped by the word emptiness and think that it means that there is nothing permanent whatsoever here. The third turning is going to say, no. Just because we can't talk about it very well doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, and it is a tremendous thing to be involved with. And that's the Buddha nature, which is the underlying reality of every single one of us and all other sentient beings. So that's just a taste of what's coming. Well, what's happening on the West Coast? Anybody out there have a question?
I just wanted to make a comment. One of the first questions you asked was about the nature of this universe. And physicists have basically said that because this universe is made up of matter and it's also made up of antimatter, and the two cancel each other out,
mm-hmm.
The truth of the matter is that there is no universe, that there is absolutely nothing. Now that may sound sort of on the nihilistic side of things, like what's the point then?
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that it's created, that a loving creator has put this universe in place, means that there is definite purpose. There is intentionality behind it. And that speaks to me, along with so much of what you've discussed this evening, of developing certain qualities and characteristics And that is purpose. It's not owning stuff. It's not being in poverty. It's not being a lead thinker in anything or a dumbbell in everything. It's about developing qualities and characteristics of the divine, those spiritual attributes and qualities that we've been asked by every manifestation to grow and develop as we go through life, because that's all we take with us.
Mm-hmm. Nicely said. But that, how does that change when you're talking about a religion that doesn't have a creator in its belief system?
Is belief in a creator any better for somebody who has become a spiritual being than someone who doesn't have a creator in mind and still expresses or develops those qualities and characteristics? What's more important, the belief or the qualities and characteristics?
I guess it's more about motivation, isn't it?
It could be, but wouldn't that still come down to an individual motivation? Some people are motivated by God and fear of God even.
Mm-hmm.
And others are motivated by growing themselves into something which is spiritual in nature. I don't think that we need to have a belief in God to want to become spiritual beings.
You know, Mark, I know a Buddhist who calls herself a Mahayana Buddhist, and she says she's taken the Bodhisattva vow, and she's a lovely person and very active in interfaith and social justice. She's involved with listening. She makes it a full-time job to listen and care everywhere she goes. And a lot of your paragraphs tonight describe how this woman tries to live. And so but she doesn't worry about terms like creator and God and prayer, these are all, she says, she's detached. These are important to people. She experiences their sense of these terms. She doesn't argue with people about whether there's a creator or not. Mm-hmm. She was very compassionate about the role your beliefs play for you, whatever they are. That's why she can do interfaith work and be a social justice advocate and be a listener. She tries to get in between people that are fighting and listen to them both and help them to listen to each other. So, anyway, I sort of learned a lot about Bodhisattva from knowing her. She's trying to be one.
Okay. Any other final comments? Belinda, okay.
Comment here. I just would like to comment on that a little bit. Yeah, on process and process of moving from a state of ignorance, as it were, to a state of enlightenment and so forth. Who needs a creator? Because the emphasis here is on the process of the individual or many individuals from one state to another. And in that sense, and I've thought for many years, creation, coming sort of vaguely from a Christian background or Abrahamic religion where you have a creator and yes, there's a moment of creation, et cetera, et cetera. But creation is really a process. That's why we have progressive revelation. It doesn't all happen. Well, for God, it may happen all at once, but for us, it happens in a process. So I think if we absolutely had to bridge between a Buddhist view and a Abrahamic religion view, and that was something that came up this afternoon. This young man asked if we believed in God is a creator. And David just said yes and left it at that without going into any detail or anything like that, because he was basically focusing on essentials. And but that what we were talking about just now reminded me of that. And I think if we bridge that by thinking of everything as a process, and you mentioned that earlier, and even in biology, I've been reading about fungi and I can't pronounce the word.
Lichen.
And things in biology, it's not cut and dried. One thing flows into the other and back again, and so forth. It's really interesting. But it does emphasize this whole concept of everything as being a process.
Yeah. I think we're going to have to ask Harold to do a course on Whitehead.
The process philosopher theologian. Yeah, there's a lot of interest between process thinkers and Buddhists. They have a kind of a love relationship, near as I can tell. There's a Christian theologian who studied process thought, and then he discovered Buddhism, and he said, "Oh my goodness, are they similar?" John Cobb.
Oh yeah.
Found the connection between process thought and Buddhist thought, and its relevance for like dialogue too, understanding each other, seeing, and also the dialogue between science and spirituality, because science is a process. Spirituality is a process.
So you should do a course on this. I think there'd be a lot of people interested in that.
Jack could do it too.
Okay, Jennifer's got 3 fingers up.
I've done a bit of reading, well, for some time, I guess, in terms of science, and you know, I'm quite interested in quantum physics and that sort of thing, but more recently in terms of the universe. And I think in the news recently, it's talked about an even better telescope to see the universe.
Yep.
And it is so incredible. Okay, like it's mind-blowing what can actually be seen by telescopes now out into the universe. So the whole concept of God, you know, we believe that God is unknowable, right? And if you follow science and what's been happening in terms of what we can tell, like that becomes very obvious that it's totally beyond human conception. So when somebody says that they don't believe in God or whatever, it's beyond anybody being able to really conceptualize anyway. So anyway, I have found that quite mind expanding, okay, to follow some of what's happening in science these days. So anyway, thought I'd just mention that.
Have they started receiving photographs from that new telescope yet?
That I don't know. But
James Webb.
Recently, I read one of Guy Murchie's books. Remember, I mentioned Guy Murchie to you, Music of the Spheres, and he talks about the universe. And anyway, I get very excited about these things. So,
You don't get vertigo?
We are such a speck. We are such an infinitesimal speck. You know, so what has created the universe is so well beyond our ability to ever conceive. So.
Oh, Harold's got something. He's showing us a book that he's got that's on that subject. And
yeah,
then
this
Leslie.
is called Welcome to the Universe by Neil deGrasse Tyson and 2 of his colleagues. And here's a diagram of what the universe looks like. See, each one of those little specks They're little tiny specks. They're galaxies. And then there's a part of some of these galaxies are like, there's something like the Great Wall here. There's like a structure. They say it's the biggest structure known in the universe. And it's a whole bunch of galaxies that seem clustered together in sort of a wall. And it's called the Sloan Great Wall. But this picture really makes you feel small because those little specks that you can't really see very well are galaxies, which are, you know, pretty big. They have lots of solar systems in them and things like that. So anyway, this book, I was hoping, you know, because it's called Welcome to the Universe, it would be sort of a dumbed down version. Unfortunately, it didn't dumb it down enough for me. It's still pretty hard, but it's better than nothing.
Okay, Leslie, what were you going to say?
I heard part of an interview today on Tapestry. I don't know if any of you heard it, with this man who, David Chalmers, who was talking about what is reality. And he's written a book about reality. And he's also one of the guys who wrote the screenplay for The Matrix. So are we a projection of somebody else's reality? Or anyway, he's written a whole book about this as a philosophical question. And he also takes it into kind of technology and artificial intelligence. His photograph is one where he has this big, you know, one of those, I don't know what you call them, but it's sort of like goggles, but you're seeing, there's no glasses. It's a thing you put on your head that takes you into another virtual reality.
Yep.
So I guess he's really fascinated with that, but he also links it to Descartes and Plato and the, you know, age-old philosophical questions of what is reality? Is what we live real? Yeah.
Oh, Joey's got a hand.
When I hear people talking about the vastness, it makes me feel comforted, really, rather than frightened. It's just this vastness. It's all right to be this small little speck and not to know everything. I find it wonderful to be part of this vast universe or universes.
A lot of things to think about. My goodness. Okay, folks, I think it's probably time. Oh, no, you're going. Yeah. Harold's saying goodbye. He's got to go do something else. Okay, folks, that's it. We'll see you next week. Hopefully we won't have any of the troubles getting started that we did tonight. It's great to see everybody.